Welcome to the Sixth Cast, a podcast where we discuss real-world strategies, tips, and stories that provide helpful insights for your digital transformation experience.
On today's episode of Sixth Cast, we're speaking with Roshni Wijayasinha, the founder of Prosh Marketing. Roshni has over 15 years of marketing experience, has launched over 15 products and brands in over 20 markets worldwide, has helped companies attain 9-figure investment rounds, and started her career working on top consumer brands on the agency side, and has built her reputation by bridging creativity and strategic insights together into leading global technology companies such as Microsoft, Sony, and Kobo. More recently, she built up marketing teams and brands at technology leaders like Juice Mobile, Thinking Capital, Benecade, and Foxbook. She's founded Prosh Marketing, a marketing consulting agency that specializes in strategy, planning, and communications for small and medium-sized businesses and startups. In today's episode, we'll be talking about her professional journey, advice to women in business, mentorship, consulting, and entrepreneurship, innovation, and integrative working models.
Hello all, glad to be back with another episode of Sixth Cast, the hustle and the thrive in the six. Today I have my good friend Roshni Wijayasinha, the founder and chief strategy officer of Prosh Marketing. Welcome, Roshni.
Thanks, Waruna. Thanks for having me.
Roshni, so tell me a bit about yourself, who you are, how's your life journey has been so far, and what you want to achieve in life.
So to maybe take a step back, who I am as a person would probably be a creative person who is ambitious and really likes to solve problems. And so I've always kind of liked to help people, be of value, and that kind of took me to the marketing consulting world. So being creative, I was able to leverage my background in fine arts to have that creativity on the marketing side. And then being a person who's super helpful, I love to look at questions and see how I can add value to different clients. So I think that's who I am as a person. Where I am in life right now is I run this marketing practice, Prosh Marketing, where I help startups and small businesses with whatever budgets they have try to maximize their potential on the marketing side.
Fantastic, thank you. Now, in terms of the impact, as a social and economic impact that you want to do, how is what's your impact?
For me, I think it's training junior marketers with the tools that they need to actually be able to succeed in the market. I know that when I graduated from university, when I went out in the market, everything I learned was on the job. And a lot of the work that we had done at school was quite academic. And so I want to be able to help junior marketers make that transition from academic to actually being able to practice a marketing job. And so I do a lot of mentorship in the community, a lot of coaching. We bring on a lot of interns at Prosh Marketing ourselves to train the next generation, but I want to help them and be able to have a great transition into the working life.
Thanks. Now, I know you are an active mentor and a participant in a lot of the Schulich MBA and BBA communities. How is that going? Again, for everyone to know, Roshni did her MBA at Schulich School of Business a few years before I did, and that's how we got to know each other as well, through a mutual friend of us. And since then, for the past 5 years or so, we have been good friends, working on different projects, collaborating, exchanging ideas, bouncing around ideas, and being a great friend in the community, in the professional community, over the past 5 years. So going into that, I've seen you coming into Schulich very often and collaborating with them. How has that work has been, and what you have done so far?
I'm a strong believer in giving back, and the Schulich community gave me a lot when I was going through the program as well as after. And so the academic part was great, but for me it was the meaningful connections and the people that I met that was the most valuable part. And so being connected to that community, being able to tap into new and upcoming talent has been amazing, and give back some of my time and my experience so that I can share and grow those people as well, has been really great. And I know that they're so involved in the startup community right now. The Office of Innovation, led by Chris Carter, is doing some really cool things. And so being a part of that also keeps me on my toes, keeps me up to date, and just gives a great side of the other side of the business.
Actually, my next question, I didn't mean to ask this question this early though. Talking about startup community and startup culture and the environment in Toronto for startups, tech startup, could be any startup. How is that? Have you compared that with the Valley, or do you think there's a lot of opportunity in Toronto, or is there a way that Toronto community or Toronto business schools or business community can be a little bit more supportive towards startup communities or startups in general? What are your feelings about that?
I think in the last few years, Toronto has really come up as a destination for startups to grow. From a funding perspective, the government has invested a lot from grants and from educational programs. And then on the school side, the academic side, a lot of these schools are now growing incubators and having incubators within their schools and accelerator programs. And they're teaching entrepreneurship as a school, as a stream of education. At York University, for example, you can specialize in entrepreneurship. And I think that's really helped the younger generation have that opportunity to try something new and build something of their own. And then the ecosystem in Toronto is great. There's so many companies like Mars, Discovery District, and other kind of bigger accelerators and startup programs that bring people together, that offer that mentorship, that have guidance, and even financial support as well. And I think Toronto's definitely up and coming in the Canadian side.
Thank you. I think a lot of the people that I've spoken to who are startup founders, young, just a recent graduate who are trying to do something new, they come out with the mindset that you gotta be in the USA for a startup, or you gotta be in Valley to blossom your idea. So what's the advice that you can give? I mean, again, as I advance this question upper in the order in the conversation here, but I think it's very interesting because a lot of people I always hear, you can't do anything in Toronto. I got to go to the Valley. If you have a great idea, go to the Valley, and your funding possibility is 10x in the Valley. Is that true, or is it somewhat true?
I would say that Canadian investors are very different than American investors. So their motivations, their risk profiles, their appetite for different industries are completely different. So it depends, I would say, on your industry, on your personal network, and your values too. I think Canadian companies grown out of Canada can still garner attention from Silicon Valley investors. And so whether you want to build it in Canada or whether you want to build it in the US, I don't think it's closing the door. I think it just means that you have to work a little bit harder to find the right investors for your business.
Okay. Thanks. Kithmini, do you want to go next? Do you have some of the questions, interesting ones as well?
Roshni, my questions to you are just basically how it is to be a woman in business and how you have really found yourself as a visible minority, for example, where on this precipice where there's a change and now there's more female leaders, thankfully, and we've seen a shift. But how has it been for you in that journey and starting, out in marketing and then transitioning yourself to your own consultancy? How did that look for you?
Yeah, I would say that even in today's business landscape, we're still not at parity, and there's still a whole bunch of work to be done. I know that I've been challenged throughout my career to push the boundaries of what it means to be a female leader. We're viewed in a totally different perspective than a male leader. And what I believe is that we have to lean into our female advantages and not to try to be a male leader, but lean into the things that make us specifically unique and give us advantages. I did a speech before on the strengths and advantages of females as well as male leaders, and we all have complementary kind of leadership styles. So I think that if you can lean into your own leadership style, whether that's caring and nurturing or whether that's strong and aggressive, it should just be authentic to your personality. But I can't say that it's been smooth sailing. There have been a lot of opportunities that have passed my way because of gender or ethnicity, and they're hidden from your view. So you don't necessarily see that you've been passed over, but you can kind of feel it within the culture. And at the end of the day, those are not people you want to work with. So ideally, if my advice to young female entrepreneurs or young female business people is just be authentic to yourself, lean into your own advantages, don't try to be someone you're not, and try to find the places that really look for diversity and will actually, thrive from your diverse perspectives.
Thanks, Roshni. And I guess my next question is what are the biggest obstacles or challenges you faced or setbacks that you faced in your career, and how did you overcome them?
So, one challenge that I faced was I was in what I thought was my dream job at the time, and the company was doing a pivot. And so at that point, they were preparing to sell, but the CEO did not want to communicate that down to the rest of the people. So I was creating a marketing strategy to grow the company and get more customers, and he was looking for a marketing strategy that was more targeted towards investors. And so because he wasn't totally honest with me, my marketing plan was not aligned with his goals, and we had a lot of conflict. And so what I would say to that is just try to be open with your employees so that they understand what your actual goals are and they can better help you get there, as opposed to layering in this layer of, trust. And transparency is so important with people. And so being able to be transparent will allow people to actually be able to help you and get you to where you want to be, as opposed to hinder
Absolutely.
you.
Yeah, that's great. That's great feedback. And I guess this is going to be more of a technical question, but how, in your opinion, would small and medium-sized companies, since you work with so many and they've been plentiful in your portfolio, how do you think that they can rebound post-pandemic from loss of sales, or in extreme situations there was business closures? So what would you say would be a good way for them to restart themselves?
Yeah, so after some of this pandemic, I know that a lot of businesses have been challenged from a budget perspective. And I think that a lot of people think that marketing is only cost-driven and expensive. But marketing can also be a function that's performed with time. And so if you have time or you have money, you can still do marketing. And so I would always say continue going, always on marketing, even if you don't have the budget. Try to invest the time in it, whether that's reaching out to journalists to tell your stories, whether that's posting on different websites to get SEO links. Continue marketing, because it's been proven that those that continue to market, even in a market downturn, end up being on top, whereas those who pause and try to resume after have a lot harder of a time kind of regaining that traction.
Great, that's wonderful. So what do you think, are there any new technologies or social media platforms that now you are using with your clients? For example, we know now that a lot of businesses are using TikTok, and what is your opinion on social media strategy in that way? And do you have any feedback to the audience of what they can do to pursue new technology?
Yeah, there's so many new tools now to reach customers. On the social side, I think Clubhouse is a really interesting one for B2B targeting, because you have all of the interesting decision makers there and listening. And so it's a great place to build out that thought leadership perspective and make new make new connections, as well as potentially even meet new customers there through that thought leadership activity. Another tool that's not new, but technology that I recommend for most startups is CRM. And so making sure that they have a customer relationship management tool that can help them build profiles and individualize their customer data so that they actually understand who they're selling to and where they are in their pipeline can be super beneficial. And then in terms of staying up to date with the latest and greatest, I would say there's always opportunity to learn more about the newer marketing technologies, but sometimes investing in integrating those technologies before you're ready is not necessarily the best idea. And so what I would say is research the technologies, make sure you know what you're looking for from that technology and it fits that goal, as opposed to just trying it for the sake of trying it. And so if it has a strategic value to you, then it's worth trying out. But if it doesn't have a strategic value, then you could be spending your time elsewhere more successfully.
What do you think some of the indicators would be for potential success? What do you look at when you look at it competitively in a landscape?
Yeah, so one of the things is it giving me the information or a bit like tools that I need? So the information might be certain data points. You might integrate this whole data analytics tool and then realize that it doesn't integrate three data points that are crucial to your business because they do them
Right.
offline, for example. So you can't capture that through technology. So really understanding how that piece of software is going to solve your problem will allow you to think about it more strategically as opposed to just being like, oh, that's a cool technology, let's try it. Because there's so many, you can really just get bogged down in trying a whole bunch of new things.
Great. And so, what advice would you give to anybody who's starting out and wanting to pursue a startup of your nature, especially if it's a woman? What advice do you think you can provide to younger females or just females in general?
I would just say go for it. I think there's a lot of stigma against younger people or younger women specifically trying out new businesses because they might be in the same age as like getting married or having children. And so I wouldn't say put your life on hold for those things. I would say go ahead and make your life integrate with those things, because if you wait for the perfect time for anything, there'll never be a perfect time. I know that I started my business 6 months later than I probably should have, but I was nervous to make that initial jump because I had a fixed salary, and so there's never going to be a perfect time. Just go for it, try something, and take a risk. Like, a lot of females are less risk averse, and I think if you don't take a risk, you don't get that reward, and that reward could be so meaningful, like having the lifestyle that you want, having the work that actually makes a difference to you and like motivates you, can make a huge difference to your quality of life too. And so without that risk, there's no reward. But I would say make a calculated risk. Try to get some business before you start, so that you're not starting with $0 coming in, so you have at least a base. And potentially even try it while you're having a full-time job, build something on the side, and then see once it's got traction, then you can leave that full-time job that's paying the bills.
Right. That's really great advice. And lots of people have ideas, but many face challenges to bring them to life. Why do you think that is? What could be the reason for not bringing it to fruition?
I think that's the risk and the fear thing that I was talking about before. To go ahead and build something requires you to take a risk, requires you to spend that time. I know that I'm building a product as well for startups, and it's been a product that's been in the works for a long time, and then you're always just perfecting it until like, when is it actually ready? And it will never be fully ready, so you've just got to kind of go out with it and launch when you are ready, and then or when you have something that's market ready, and then you can always tweak from that point, so you don't have to wait till it's perfect.
That's great. And do you think also, I think from my vantage point, that women as well, because of all these different various factors that they have to go through, it probably is more of a daunting endeavor to start entrepreneurship in itself. Because to be honest, like for myself, I found that mentorship was very difficult to find of a representation that I was looking for. And maybe many other women have felt the same way. Did you ever have anybody in your industry or career that provided mentorship for you that you were able to model yourself after, so you can set your targets or your objectives and where you wanted to see on the long term?
I did. Unfortunately, my mentor does not look like me and is not female, but they did teach me a lot about how to push myself and how to build a business. I think my parents have also been great mentors. My dad's an entrepreneur, and my parents have worked together in growing a business. And so watching them has really shown me the benefits of working for yourself. It's also shown me how you can build something of your own and grow, and he's my mentor whenever I have like finance and accounting questions, or I have like different client situations. I can definitely seek advice from him. But I think like they're amazing mentors because they've done it before, and then I have more marketing mentors who can help me on the technical side as well. But again, like if you can't find a mentor who looks like you, it doesn't matter. You can still be the first person to do that. And but like you said, having that mentorship and having people around you who've done it before and who can give you advice is invaluable.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And I think the last kind of question that we have is any advice to the small business owners, the marketers with the rapidly changing business landscape? And what do you think the biggest blunder of someone's growth could be? Could that be a personal reason, or is that reason more so of the circumstances, environmental, economic? What could that be in terms of a barrier of growth?
I think a barrier of growth sometimes becomes their marketing budget because you feel that if I have like no dollars for marketing budget, I can't do marketing. And it becomes a mental block for a
Right.
lot of businesses. And what I would say again is you don't have to have budget,
Yeah.
just spend some time on it. Get an intern, get a junior marketer, get a family friend who can
Right.
volunteer. There are so many different options that you could leverage that can still help you grow. And so just because you don't have a budget doesn't mean you can't market.
And
Nice.
that's one of the things, Roshni, I have seen as well. Marketing budget is the first to get cut, right? If something goes down, okay, your marketing budget, sorry guys, gotta cut down 50%, 25%, 10%, whatever the number is. So going back to the original question that we had, a few questions prior to this, that even in the pandemic, the marketing budget was the one to get cut. But you said the businesses should do otherwise. They should do instead of spending on anything else. Should be start doing marketing. Now, do you have any examples of businesses who decided to do that, uh, even through the difficult times, and they have succeeded?
Yeah, so for example, well, just to talk about the theory behind why businesses should continue to market throughout an economic downturn, there's less competition because other people are pulling out. So, for example, you could access AdWords more affordably. There's also the momentum that you continue growing on, for example, SEO or any of your ad campaigns. And if you pause, you've got to start again and rebuild those customer pools and the data. So it takes time to build up again. And so the lost momentum from being out is actually more costly than continuing to market. And you have some advantages because there's less competition in a market where it's tough. And so that's why companies should continue doing it. So I work with a client called Foxquilt. They're an insurance company that sells business insurance to small businesses. They continued and aggressively grow their marketing budget through the pandemic, and they've seen successful growth because there was less competition in the field. They were able to grow their existing base, and when the market has now kind of come back to normal, they were able to continue and be in a higher level spot from an SEO perspective than others who had paused. And so just keeping going has really let them kind of have an advantage out the other end.
Right, interesting. Now, I've seen that it's similar to investing in a market, downturn, right? Those who buy stocks when things are down and at a lower price, and few years down the road, you're making return, in multiples. So that's probably is the way that you should be looking at it as well. Now, in terms of retail landscape in Canada, or it could be in North America, what do you think? I've seen a lot of businesses are still struggling to fight back Amazon, and Amazon is growing aggressively in Canada. And every corner that I see, I go to Toronto, I pass at least two massive Amazon warehouses, and in a span of 40 minutes. So, how do you think small businesses, particularly retail or B2B retailers, do you think they should be working with Amazon, or is Amazon predatory? Is Amazon is it healthy for the economy? What is your opinion? You have worked with a lot of small to medium-sized businesses. Particularly, I think you may have worked with e-commerce retailers as well as retail, regular retailers as well. What does the future look like? What does it hold?
I think there's going to be increased competition from Amazon in certain key areas. What I would say for retail businesses is focus on the experience. And so, where can you compete that Amazon cannot compete is the physical experience. So whether that's on the clothes buying front, you still need to try on a pair of jeans to make sure you fit in them before you turn it back. And, the hassle of getting a pair of jeans, returning it back to Amazon, etc. If you have an event that night you want to wear a pair of jeans to, you need it right away. And so whether you can deliver on certain experiences better than Amazon will be where you can win. And so even you can see this in the cannabis retail environment where they're creating an experience when you go into these stores. They're like huge stores with glass cases. They're a little bit like Apple stores. They're trying to create an experience where someone's giving you a consultative experience and asking you about your preferences. And so I think in general, if you can start to think about retail as a place where people experience things, as opposed to maybe even where they purchase, and have that offline purchasability, that will allow you to kind of compete against a company like Amazon and Walmart at the same time.
So, Roshni, from what I'm hearing, do you still believe in brick and mortar, or do you believe that it should, like, do you believe more in e-commerce? And because the experience factor that you're really talking about, it goes into the store experience and the customer service experience and how you're able to have an experiential feel. You can touch the clothes, you can be able to examine the quality, for example, before you purchase. So, are you still a champion of brick and mortar? Or do you feel as though we've exhausted that through the pandemic and it's accelerated past that where e-commerce is now? Because I find as women, you're speaking to me as well. I still like the experience, and I think that does make a huge factor in transaction difference of how much I want to spend.
100%. We're human beings at the end of the day. And so I think we're always going to look at the experience, whether it's your interactive experience on a website or whether it's a retail experience. And those are totally different things that they offer. So even from a grocery store perspective, throughout the pandemic, we would order groceries, but I still like looking at my fruit and picking out the fruit and vegetable that I'm going to actually eat. I want the biggest zucchini, for example. So, because, we make a lot of things with them. So getting two small ones and is less convenient for me, for example. So I would just say people will still appreciate the retail buying experience for certain things where there's actually some sort of interaction. And even if you think of tech products where you would assume that you can buy and sell them online with all of the specifications, you don't necessarily have that ability to ask so many questions online. You don't have the ability to see, does that fit on my head for the headset? Do I look like an idiot with these heads? Headsets on. So just small things like that I still think the in-person, retail experience provides that the online doesn't and will never be able to do. Even, for example, trying on makeup. And so there are a lot of companies now that have these apps where you can take a photo of yourself and you can put the different shades of lipstick on, but it doesn't look real. And I still would like to try it on because you don't get the texture. You don't get the, is it creamy? Is it metallic?
Absolutely.
So all of these different things cannot be done through the web. And unless they're totally virtual products, they will never be done totally through the web.
Yeah, you know what? These different integrative models that you're talking about, you were discussing briefly before just about marketing. It could also apply into e-commerce plus the experience as well by having these types of swatches, for example, in makeup, and being able to cross-compare them with the physical product would be the ideal scenario. So everything seems like it's a merger between virtual and physical worlds that can come together. Having a humongous iPad that's available in a store so you're able to drag and drop into a cart would be the ideal futuristic way of shopping. And so you're still able to try it on, but you're able to use technology to maybe bypass the line or talk to a customer service representative in the store. And it just seems like that experience seems a lot more, of a model that would be way down the line, probably when my son is shopping for himself. But yeah.
more of an
integrative.
more an
What I hear.
integrated experience. I agree with that as well because when I have to do shopping at Home Depot, I don't want to really spend half an hour, 45 minutes just walking through the aisles and trying to find what I want. I would instead use the app and find the product, and then would go and either buy it or pick it up from the shop, or just go into the spot. Right? Usually I think I don't know whether it's Home Depot, at least Canadian Tire, they have their the location as well in the aisle spot as well. So the bin location is also indicated on their website, which is helpful. I think I agree. It is pretty. I think we are moving towards more of a integrated experience. Like it's a hybrid experience. Right? You would do your research. You would do your maybe pre-buying on your app or on the website, and then you would still go and buy it. People are right now dying for human experience, human interaction, and I used to it over the summer. People were just everyone was pretty much outside. They were going into cottages, just driving around, going to, like, if you had seen how Yogdale Mall was, it was just, you couldn't even get in there. It was so busy because people were really craving for human interaction. So it is. It is. I too don't think that brick and mortar is dead. I think it is. It will be coming into an era where they have to provide an integrative experience where digital and in-store experience is merged together. And that's something that we felt as well. Launching Skip the Shop, everyone was buying, right, flocking onto the website initially, and then they were going down because they really love to go and take a look at it, get the apple, check it out, and okay, this is good. Okay, I'm gonna get like the best, choose the best 10 apples or best 10 bananas or whatever you wanted to pick from the grocery store. I don't do groceries, but so I'm just I'm not. I've seen people do that. I've seen my wife does it. But I think you want that touch and feel with groceries.
Yeah.
So that's where I have my next question is, I've seen a lot of companies have invested a lot, billions into e-commerce. In my opinion, I've seen Loblaws and especially Waruna, probably in three-figure millions they invested into e-commerce. I have a feeling that it was a little bit of a hasty decision. They would have expected something otherwise. What is your feeling? Do you think people jumped into digital transformation without really having? I think Vola had been in the works for a while, so I'm going to keep that aside. But many of the other key grocery chains, they dumped a lot of money and they started hiring people. Do you think that was the right decision? Do you think they were a little hasty at the time, or they didn't know what to do?
I think they needed to make quick decisions to react to the market landscape as it was, and I think that if they were smart, they didn't make permanent infrastructure changes. They made flexible infrastructure changes that would allow them to either go back or keep it going depending on how the market went, because you never know. Like, it could shift. Like, I do know that most of the from a grocery perspective, most of like the staples, I probably won't go grocery shopping. I probably would just like it delivered. Like, I need canned tomatoes, I need certain things like chickpeas. Those are the things that the staples that you need on a regular basis, and they're quite heavy to carry. Like, if you kind of just get it dropped off at your door, you don't have to load it into your car, take it out of the car, put it in your fridge. Here, I get it dropped to my door, I just put it in the fridge, and I save myself a whole bunch of time, like walking up and down those aisles. And then maybe just top up with fruits and vegetables. So I still see that certain people will actually kind of change their buying behavior and change and adapt most of it. Some people won't change at all and will go back to the old style. And then there'll be a hybrid of people who will use both.
I mean, pre-pandemic, I would say what we were constrained by was convenience and time, right? We were looking to reduce time restriction and the convenience of bypassing a line, for example, at Walmart, which is a humongous store, and not being able to self-serve was a hindrance to the amount that you would want to purchase. So the introduction of that through the pandemic has extremely been like a game changer for convenience. And I know as like a busy mother and a father, a lot of people walk in there despite what your income bracket is. You walk in there to get the convenience of the things that are on the aisle, and their competitive pricing, right? And at the end of the day, when you can walk in and self-scan, or at Shoppers Drug Mart, you can walk in and self-scan, it really saves you the time, which is the biggest factor of technology and acceleration. But I think the grass is not greener on the other side. When you take away something and there's an absence of it of 15 months, as humans, we are obviously going to be more inclined to miss it. And so I think now the experience is going the other way, where you're opening the doors and now there's vaccine passports. And so people are rushing to go out for the experience again because they've been absent of that and starved at that for so long. So the hybrid of every model, I think when you look at education, when you look at retail, when you're looking at all these different industries, the integrative approach is exactly what you were speaking about marketing in general. It applies to every real industry right now at the moment. So pre and post pandemic is becoming like two of these worlds combined. So I do agree with everything that you said, Roshni, and I completely, through my experience, also support all of your
That's such
ideas.
a great point that you bring up about how it affects all of the industries, and I think that's just how societies kind of move in general. We get faced with something, whether it's like the economic downturn of like 2009, or whether it's the pandemic, and we all face it.
Right.
We go through some big structural changes, and then we take the best from those structural changes and we continue, and then the best from what was working before, and then we drive forward. And so in that spirit of continuous improvement, we kind of stumble upon technologies and opportunities, and some of them are horrible and they're just stopgaps until we can go back to normal, and then some of them are like, oh, that's such a great idea, why wasn't I doing that before? But yeah.
Do you think now that businesses, since we've gone through this like massive impact and change, and it was so unexpected and nobody saw it coming, there was no real pre-planning or planning in general for organizations to have? Do you think now we've looked internally and said maybe there's a need for contingency planning? Because I've always been an advocate, even on a personal front, for contingency plans in place, even from a family planning point of view, because there's always crises that could pop up around the corner. And I think a lot of businesses before, nobody could have conceived what would have happened. None of us would have had the foresight to be able to see what was around the corner. So just reaction and reacting, it kept everyone in a state of influx. But now stepping back, maybe it's time that as organizations we are forward planning and creating crisis planning and operational plans that look towards these like cost saving strategies, for example. I know even on a personal front, that's what I've been thinking. It's changed my opinion about spending, and I'm like, personal spending. I feel a massive amount of guilt that I probably didn't a year ago or 2 years ago, and now I'm become more conscientious, and I think about it and review it like very frequently. Of like, what am I doing? And there's guilt associated to renting affordable housing. I know these are the things that are off topic to business, but it definitely plays into our lifestyle. So what do you think in terms of a marketer? Would that something be that you would suggest to businesses, is to think about potential, the forward and plan for future, so that we don't have these unexpected I don't know what you
challenges,
as, but they're kind of implosions, right?
What I hope most businesses have taken out of this is that risk mitigation planning perspective, because as you mentioned, you never know what will happen, but we were all quite complacent. And so if we were smart, we would have learned from this, and we would start to think about what else could happen. Because, for example, like solar flares could take down the internet, and then what happens if you don't have internet? And now we've moved all remote. So it's just that like climate change could happen, and there could be floods in your local area where people can't get to work. And so these were things that we were not actively thinking about before, and hopefully operations, HR, and company owners are starting to think about it.
Roshni, we can go on for hours with this.
Yeah, you're very informative.
Insightful. Yeah. Last question for you is that if someone wants to change their careers or take a new course, or could be a postgrad, undergrad course, what do you recommend these days, considering the changes in the economics, changes in the societal, environmental, and economical changes? What is trending? What skills or education should you have in your
so I would say if you're looking to change what you're doing, do it for something that you're really passionate about. Do it for something that you can wake up every morning, and if you made a lot less than what you're making now, you would still be happy. Because if you're going to change careers in the middle of your career, you're probably going to set some financial setbacks in terms of growth. And so if it's something that you love and you're so motivated about and it really makes you happy, then first of all, it will be motivating to do it even when you're not making as much. But second of all, you will just do a lot better than doing something that you don't have your whole heart into. And so, there's so many different opportunities. You might go into something that's super niche. And like, for example, like I have a love for fine arts, and I still do a lot of painting and some street art. And, growing up, that was not a credible career path for me. But the people who did it in my school, who were super passionate, they just made it work. And if you love it hard enough, you can just make it work. But if you're just doing it for the money, you're never going to get anywhere. And I would say you just have to have that real passion. In terms of tooling and education, there's so many options that are cost effective, like getting Udemy courses or LinkedIn Learning, things like that. Try those things out before you go and do a big course, like invest in a BrainStation course that might be like $3,000, or a U of T course or an MBA. I would say try it out on a small scale and see if you actually really like it, because certain things might be attractive about that job, but you might not understand that you also have to do finance, for example, or you also have to do these data skills, and it's not exactly what you thought it was. Before you make that whole jump, like thoroughly investigate it. Maybe even sit in a day with someone who's got that job and see what that is like. And then I would just say go for it. Like, as I mentioned before, no risk, no reward. And it might be scary, but at the end of the day, it will make you happy.
Yeah. I think right now many people probably have a lot of resistance or reluctance to enter a new market and a job, because the risk aversion is naturally probably increased as a result of so many of these really, in some cases, devastating impacts of the pandemic, right? If loss of family members, for example, deterioration of health, finances, loss of job. So the risk averseness would naturally just go down, and in some way, as a society, we need to regain that, because businesses need to restart again, or new ideas need to start again. And if we have generations that are constantly being restricted and told no, their entrepreneurship, their innovation, and their creativity naturally declines with that, right? The more you restrict and the more you create these barriers, the mind also operates in the same way, and your mind creates blockages of barriers and reasons just to look at things in a net negative rather than opportunities. You're looking at losses. So I think it's been 3 years of consistent news cycles and the media, the sensationalization of everything. It's impacted our psychology of what we can do and what we can achieve, and economically what we are able, what our appetite for risk is. I don't think most people have it. Yeah, so it's really important that the things that you're saying are helping to regain these conversations so we can restart restart things in a positive way.
Yeah, my pleasure. I just want to make
Roshni.
sure that people understand that there's always an option to be happy in what you're doing. There's so many different jobs out there that if you're not happy doing what you're doing, you could either start your own thing, build a side gig, try a different job. Like, you don't have to be stuck in a career that you don't love, because you're doing it for so many hours a day and it affects your mental health. And especially through these times, that if you pursue something that you love and you're happy about doing every day, you'll be so much happier in general, and that will make your life so much better.
Absolutely.
Roshni, thank you so much. Thank you very much for the discussion,
Thanks, Roshni.
Conversation, and your advice and ideas as well. I hope that a lot of people can take this away, especially young professionals, young women. I have 2 children myself, 2 girls myself, who can look up to these ideas and this advice and make a better life out of them. And thank you very much. And we'll hope that we can do another one at some point in the future. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Roshni.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Sixcast. We'd love to connect with you, so feel free to comment or reshare. You can also find us on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Six Senses. Bye for now!